Okay, so somebody asked me how to do the method override in TinyApp. So the breakout is about CSS, but maybe we can do that quickly, and then we can move on to some CSS. So this is we need it for an update, right? I don't think I have everything I need for this in this one. TinyApp. Let's see in this one. Post login, post register. It needs to be post. Okay, so we have this put here. I think I've done the method override on this one. Okay, because when I want to do an update, well, you probably have something like this. Post, something like this, right? Now, if we want to do a put, we need to use a method override. And to use a method override, you need to go to npm and look for that method override package, this one here. So you need to npm install this, right? So you would go to your terminal and npm install method override -save to ours, right? You would do that. Now, how to use it? Okay, so you need that require at the top, right? And then you need to use an app.use, and the one that you need to use is this one. App.use method override _method. That's the one you need to use. So I probably have this set up already in here. So let's go at the top. So I have my method override with my require. And looking at the app.use, it's this one with this _method. Right? Okay, so now this is set up. How do we actually use it? That's in the form. So that's in, for example, in URL show. When we do the form action is still the same thing, so that doesn't change. But the method is going to change. Well, no, sorry. It's the action that is going to change, and the method is still a post, because a form does understand only get and post. So the form is still a post, but you're going to build a different URL for your action. So it's going to be action/URL and URLs / the short URL value that might look like something like this. And then you're going to have a question mark and then an _method equals put. So that's the URL of your action. And obviously this one, you don't want a hard-coded value, so that's why this is there. That's the short URL that goes there. Okay? So you're appending an _method to your action. That is going to translate your post request into a put request. And in your Express server, then you can use a put instead of a post. Which is, where is it? This one. So before you add a post there, you can now use a put if you change that in your view here. So this action needs to append this question mark _method equals put. You can do the same for the delete. let me remove that. And the delete is actually in URL index, because there's a button to delete, right? So this is my form for my delete. So now I have my URLs, my short URL, and now I have this method delete. My form method is still a post. But then in my Express server, when I want to delete, I use app.delete instead of app.post. Does that help?
Yeah, I just forgot the question mark.
Okay. Good. Yes?
What is the advantage of using a put here instead of a post? Because that's what functionality?
No, it's just because it's the right that's the right verb to use. Okay, instead of a post. A post is usually for creating a new resource, while a put is an update. And there's actually a benefit to using a put over a post, is that the put is more restrictive. So it's a little bit safer than using a real post. All right. Okay, so that's that. Any question about this? Good. Let's close that. Let's not save. Okay. Let's go to today's topic. All right. Okay, first we're going to look at how to add styles to our page. There are 3 ways. And then we're going to talk about selectors. What are selectors? How can we create selectors? And after that, we're going to look at CSS specificity and talk about the cascade. All right. Okay, so let's say I have this page here, which is a simple HTML document. This one here. And I want to style it. Well, I have basically 3 ways to add style to my document. The first one is what we call inline style. And inline style is that we're going to go inside here and we're going to add the style attribute to the tag itself. I already have a class attribute, so I'm just adding a new style attribute like this. And I'm going to put my style definition inside those quotes. So here I want to have this title in red. So the rule for that is color, all the properties color, and the value I'm going to put red. Right? So I did put my my CSS rule inside my style attribute directly on that tag. And that's what we call an inline style. So now my title is now in red. And I can do that on any tag. I could put a style here. And I could say maybe I want a background color. And let's say beige. And now I change the background color of this one. So that's the first method. The second method is what we call an internal style sheet. It's internal to this document. So basically, instead of putting the style attribute in each of these tags, I'm going to put a style tag inside the head of my document. And I'm going to place all my styles in that tag. So for example, I'm going to say Okay, so let's say I need to create a selector first. And maybe I'm going to use the P tag. So I'm going to say the P tag is going to have a different styling. Maybe let's do border 1px solid, maybe this blue. So now when I load the page, I see that I have a border around this one. And this is coming from an internal style sheet. And I can define as many styles as I like in there. Maybe let's put a little bit more padding. Maybe my form. Let's do input. Border 1 pixel. Maybe I'm going to dash it this time. And this is going to be red. So now you see that my input has now a dash border around it. Okay? So that's the second way to add style to a document. At this point, can we highlight the difference between an inline style and an internal one? Let's do something more. Let's do an H2 here so you have a better example. And let's say I'm going to do color blue. So on my H2 on this line 29, I have an inline style and I have a style defined in an internal style sheet targeting the same element. So what is going to be the color? Is it going to be red or blue? Good question. Yeah?
Red.
Red? Okay. Let's see. Who says blue? Yeah? All right. Take the challenge. Well, actually, you're both right.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Because we have two H2s in this page. Okay? So this is the first H2. This is the second one.
I meant the one that was right.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one is the one where we set the inline style on, right? And the second one, we didn't set any inline style on the second one. So that one remained not impacted by this inline style. So what can we say about inline versus internal? Who has the priority? Inline style has priority over internal. Now it did color the second one because there was not an inline style on that one already. So it did skip the first one and did color the second one. So the inline style has a higher priority. So the question is, why not go for the inline style rather than the internal style sheet? Why not do that?
It's ugly.
It's ugly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Because with your style, you might target, in this case, we wanted to target both H2s, let's say. If I wanted to target both H2s, I would need to create another inline style here with the exact same color, color red. If I do that, they're both red. But now, if I change my mind. So red is not the right color for my titles. I want to change that color for pink, let's say. Now I need to go here, change it to pink, and I need to go here, change it again to pink. And if I wouldn't have, let's say, 5 other H2s, then I would need to repeat this process multiple times in the document. That could lead to errors, right? If I forget one, that would remain red because I forgot it, right? This first one is in pink, now the second one is red, and I need to go one by one. So that's not a good way to manage your style. So if I want to change my H2 to pink, I can do it centrally here and not having any inline style defined on my tag. Remove that one too. And now all my coloring is defined in my internal style sheet. So if I want to change the color, I just change that central location. Only one time, right? I don't know, I can change the color. Salmon. Okay, so let's say this is the right color for my titles. Cool. So it's more manageable to use an internal style sheet than to use an inline style. So when would you use an inline style? Well, maybe you're testing, right? And you just want to quickly do something and look at the style. So that would be one way. That you're going to later on move this style into somewhere else. Or because it has a higher priority, you want to override any previous styling on it on purpose. But we should never abuse the inline style. So never put inline style everywhere throughout your code. This is really a bad practice. All right. The third way to add styles to a document is to actually link to an external style sheet. Although this is more convenient than inline style, it's still a problem. First, it's in the middle of the document. It's still inside an HTML document. So what we would like to do is take this out of the document, create an external style sheet here. Now we don't need the style tag anymore because we know that these are just the styles. Notice that my file has a CSS extension. So it's .css. And I'm going to tell the browser that this document is going to use these external styles. So to do that, I'm going to use the link tag. This one. Link rel style sheet, href, and now I'm going to link to it in style.css. When I do create the link in the head, now it's saying to the browser, hey browser, this page is using this external style sheet. So you need to apply those styles in this document. And now I'm reloading exactly the same thing. Except that it's not an internal style sheet anymore, it's an external one. So in terms of priority, in terms of loading these, is, well, is the round working? I think I need some window cleaner. Priority number one, inline. This is going to override pretty much everything. Priority number two, internal. Then, last priority, external. So, even though the external style sheet has a lesser priority, it's still more useful than the other two. Because let's imagine that we have like 10 documents in our app. And we're defining an internal style sheet. So this internal style sheet, like we had before, these style needs to be duplicated in each of the head section of each document. And we're going to get into the same problem here, is that if we change our mind, we want to change our style, we're going to have to change the styles of these 10 documents. go in each of these one by one and change these styles and duplicate the styling. So internal style sheet is not a good way to manage styling for the whole app. While external, the only thing we need to do is to add this link tag into all pages of our app. And then all the styles are managed centrally in this single file. So if you change it here, it's going to change across the board. So much more useful doing this way. Okay, so that's the preferred way. Any question about this?
What kind of website requires 10 different HTML pages?
No, well, because what I mean is, let's say I have, okay, so this is currently my web page, right? And is that the one I was on? I have this here. But let's say my app does have another page. So I'm creating a new page. Let's see this one. Well, and let's say that this one doesn't have the style attribute.
And that page would be like an about page or something?
Yeah, it could be an about page, could be another area of my app, a product page, whatever, services page.
Okay, so you need to have
And-
HTML for each of these pages?
Yes.
In our other app, we had just one HTML page.
Yeah, yeah, that's possible. Well, actually in Tiny App, you add several, right?
Oh, we did?
Yeah, you add several EGS files.
EGS, okay.
Yeah.
And they were, okay.
So if you would have to use internal style sheet, you would have to duplicate this. That's not what I want to do. You would have to duplicate this style into every single page that compose your app. And then if you make changes, you would have to go again, change all of those. And that's not really what you want to spend your time on. Okay. All right. Okay, let's talk about selector. Okay, because we said that we need to target elements on the page and in order for the browser to apply style to them. However, to specify which element we want, we can use different types of selector. Okay, so the first type of selector is the basic selector, meaning it's going to be a simple HTML tag. For example, I'm going to color all my H2s in blue. Okay, so now both my titles are in blue, and this is using a basic selector. I'm just using their tag name as the selector. So this will be read like I'm targeting all the H2s on the page, and I will apply this color blue. Now, sometimes this is not flexible enough, because let's say I do want to color maybe the first one in blue but not touch the second one. And how can I do that? Well, I'm going to use another type of selector, which is the class selector. And the class selector is that I'm going to add a class in my HTML, and that's down below. I'm adding a class attribute, and I'm calling this first H2 having a class of main title. Now my second H2 doesn't have this class. So now, because this class is present on the first one, I can target this one more specifically. I need to stay there. Okay. So now, instead of simply saying h2, I'm going to add a dot. And now I'm going to say the h2 with the class of main title is going to be in blue. And only the one that has this class. Okay, so the class attribute is much more flexible than just a simple basic selector. And this class attribute can be used throughout the same document in multiple locations. For example, if I'm saying that, okay, I'm going to change well, I have this label here in my form that also has a class of main title. So I could have this label in blue as well. If I look in my style, well, I did specify h2 dot main title. That's why my label is not in blue. But if I do remove the h2, now it does target all the elements with the class of main title. It's a class of because of this dot in front of it. And now, I don't know if you see it, but my label here is now in blue. Okay, because it has also this class, the same class. So I can actually apply the same style rules to multiple tags using a class. All right, there's another type of selector called the ID selector. It behaves somewhat like the class. So we're going to find somewhere in our code, we're going to, instead of the class, we're going to put this ID attribute on it. And we're going to give it a name. For example, this div here has an ID of highlight. And let's say I want to target this div and do some styling on it. So then, instead of using a dot like in the class, it's using a pound sign and the name of that ID. So ID highlight, and let's do a background color. And LA. That's going to be so too strong. Let's do this one. Why am I using Firefox suddenly? Okay, let's close that. Selectors. Okay, so now it did target this specific div in my document and did create a background color on it. Okay, that is using an ID. And the ID, well, here the tag has an ID attribute, and in the CSS we do use the pound sign instead of the dot. Now what's the difference between a class and an ID? Any IDs? Yes. So while you can use the same class an unlimited number of times in your document, an ID can only be used once per document. This means that I could not have another element with the same ID here of highlight. Right? Now the browser, if I use the idea of highlight, will probably target, this is hard to know for sure. It still works, but when we're going to use JavaScript to access this, we're going to select only the first one with this. It's not going to select both of them. So that's the first thing. Although I can create a new name for it, and this is not a problem because now it has a different name. Okay, I can use other IDs in there with different names, but not the same ID in the same document. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. All right, so this was the class selector. This needs to go above. And this was the, I need my H2 back. That's what the basic selector, which was color red. All right. Now, sometimes we don't want to target by ID, neither classes, or a basic one. We can actually target element based off their attributes. For example, let's say I want to target this input. Yeah, all these inputs, let's say, or yeah, no, maybe this one here. So I want to target this one. Now, if I use a basic selector of input, I'm actually going to target this one, but all the others as well, right? Of course, I could place a class on it, and then I could do something with it. But maybe I'm thinking I'm not going to reuse this class anytime soon. So in this case, maybe I'm going to, let's give it a name. I don't remember what was this one for. Input text. Let's call that input. Text. All right, so I'm going to use that attribute to target this exact input. So I'm going to start off with the name of the tag, but then I'm going to use square brackets. And I'm going to put this attribute inside. So that is actually going to target that input with that attribute in the document. And let's do a color. Let's do, I don't know, light coral. And let's do a border. Let's do 2 pixels, solid gold. And now you see that this box here now does have a gold border around it. Although my color is still black, there might be something else going on. Let's do something else. Let's do red. Yeah, probably we need to tweak it a bit for the color. But now I see that my border is working. Okay, so now I did target one input using the name attribute. All right, any questions so far about this? So basic selector, HTML tag, class, IDs, attribute selector. All right. So now we're going to be even more specific and to target a little bit in more details what we want. And most of the time, you know, this is enough, right? Basic selector, IDs, classes, even attribute selector, we don't use it that much. But we can sometimes want to go further. So we're going to use what we call relational selectors and combinators. So we can combine them. So let's say now I'm going to look for, I'm going to target this paragraph inside this div that does have this class of second. Now this paragraph has also the class of second. So if I do just the class and I do dot second and I do like a background color, and let's do Alice blue. Now both are colored in blue. But if I combine the selector and use what we call a descendant selector, now I'm going to create two selectors separated by a space. So now there's a parent-child relationship here. So this selector means please target all the elements with the class of second that are descendant of section. In other words, you must have a parent of section in order for this to happen. If we look here, well, I have this div with a class of second, and its parent is a section. So that do fits the criteria. However, this second class here does not have a section as parent. So automatically it's out. Okay? So you can use a descendant selector to be more specific. And in this case, only the first one gets colored. Okay, what else? Immediate child selector. Okay, we have a list here, and I would like to have the children of this UL maybe in different style. So I can use the immediate child selector. So I'm going to say UL, and then I'm going to use the greater sign and LI. So it means target all the LIs that are immediate child of a UL. And now I'm going to say, I don't know, color. And then let's use dark orange. Let's use the font weight to bold. And now, as you can see, it's going to target the children of this UL.
So what's the difference between the first one, the descendant child and the immediate child?
Right. Let's see if I remove that one, if OL gets colored. Yeah, that's the thing. So if I do the descendant selector with this, right? I do a space. That's a descendant selector. Now all of the LIs under one UL will get colored. Except now I'm saying I want the immediate child or children of this UL by using this. So even though I have other LIs underneath, they're not going to be colored because they're not immediate children of this first UL. It did show in color because I did put a LI in here to wrap this OL, so it did appear as a child also by inheritance. But yeah, when I remove this, not coloring. Okay, so immediate child. Okay, another way is to use the adjacent sibling selector. So let's say, what do I want to do here? let's say when I click, I would like this to be colored differently on the one that I clicked. Let's see how to create that. Well, first of all, we need to target one of these. So in this case, I'm going to use an attribute selector. And I'm going to use input with the type of checkbox. And this needs to be inside square brackets. Right, and so because I don't, it's not the one, well, this is going to be when it's checked. This needs to be checked. And it's not this one that I want to change the style, it's the element next to it, right? Because now I see this input here, and I have a label right next to it. So it's the sibling. It's a sibling. It's at the same level, but it's just the adjacent sibling of that one. So adjacent sibling is going to be the plus sign. And I'm going to say label. Color red. And let's see if that is working. When I do this, click, now it's colored red. Because the label right next to the checkbox is a sibling, adjacent sibling. General sibling selector. Well, I don't know, maybe I want all these li under this OL to be selected. Maybe not. Let's double check what I want here. Oh, let's target this one. This one is the one that is currently active. So again, this is going to be an attribute selector. And if I do plus, that is going to be an adjacent sibling selector. And let's do background color. Background color. And let's do a lemon chiffon. All right. Did it do anything? Lemon chiffon. All right. Let's do a border so I can see. Green, yellow. No, doesn't seem to be working. Maybe because I changed this to be not wrapping a li here. Let's see if that does. Oh, okay, yeah, because I broke my list. So the one that is currently active is item 3, and now it's going to color this next this adjacent sibling. However, there is one where you can use the tilde for general sibling selector. So all the siblings after the one you're targeting. Okay, so the one I'm targeting is this one, and the siblings are all the ones that comes right after it. But it's not going to select the first few ones. All right, so these are all the types of selector we can do. But honestly, we're going to mostly use class and IDs, basic selector, descendant selector, and sometimes we want to use attribute selectors and some others in specific cases. Still good to know. Any question about selectors? Pretty straightforward? Cool. Now, what happens when the same HTML tags is targeted by multiple CSS rules? That can happen, right? For example, you see that my H2 here is targeting all the H2 and it's supposed to be coloring them in red. But I have a class of main title that is also applied on this H2 here. So both the red and the blue are targeting the same element. Which one gets applied? The blue or the red? Yeah?
Cascading, so the most recent one.
Okay, so that's why it's called CSS, for cascading style sheet. There is a cascade. And now there are some rules to decide, okay, is it going to be in red or in blue? So Josh is saying the last rule wins. For example, let's disable this one for now. So it should be in red, right? But now I'm doing another H2 here, and I say color blue. Because the last one gets the priority, it's going to be in blue instead. Okay, so we're going to override the first one. So that's one. But now, even if I do this, right, well, let's delete that one still. And let's restore this one. And I'm going to, this I need. It's all messed up. Okay, even though I'm placing this above my H2, right, H2 is last, while my class is first. So, in relationship to that rule, it should be in red, right? But now it's still going to be blue. Now, there are other rules than just the order of things, right? And that's what we call specificity. The more specific is a rule or a selector, the higher the priority. So because I'm using a class, and in the first case it's using a basic selector, the class gets a higher score in that specificity rule. And that's why it's now in blue instead of red. So how do we calculate the specificity of a selector? Well, let's see, do I have something on this? Yeah, I wanted to remove those, but let's do, okay, so for specificity, let's go here in the plan. Okay. So that's how you calculate the specificity of a style. If there is a presence of an inline style, that's 1,000 point. Okay, so an inline style has a big score, and it's probably going to override all the others. Now, beside the inline style, you're going to calculate the number of ID in the selector. An ID will get 100 points. And then you're going to calculate the number of classes pseudo classes and other attributes in the selector, well, let's stick to classes. A class will be 10 points. And a single HTML element will be 1 point. All right? So let's go back here. So let's calculate the specificity of this one. So basically you're going to do something like this, 0.0, comma 0. And you're going to state, okay, so the first digit is for how many HTML elements you have in this selector. Right now, I have only 1, so this will get 1. Second digit, I don't have any classes, so it remains at 0. Third digit, I don't have any IDs, so it remains at 0. So the score of this H2 is actually going to be 0, 0, 1, basically 1. All right. Now, because this one is a class selector, I'm going to do the same thing. So how many elements? 0. Now I do have, 0. I do have 1 class, so this is going to be 1. And I don't have any IDs in there. So this will translate into 0, 10. So that means 10. This one is... This one, I don't have any HTML elements. I don't have any classes, but I do have one ID. Okay, so now this one will give us 100. And we go on. So attribute selector are like classes. It's 10 points. Let's see about this one. What would be the score of this one?
1.
You say 1? You said what? 11? Okay. Any other answer?
Yeah, 11. Sorry, I thought we were doing the whole thing.
Okay, so you're getting, well, which one is the HTML element here? Section. Section is an HTML element. So we have 1. How many classes do we have? 1. So this one gets 1. And we don't have any IDs. So this is 11. What about this one? What's the score of this one? 2. Because we don't have any IDs nor classes, but we do have a UL and we do have a LI. So this is 2. What about this one? What's the score of this one? Tricky, huh?
11? 12?
All right, so we have the choice. 11, 12, or 22. Let's see. 0, 0, 0. Okay, how many elements do we have here? HTML element, single HTML element. Well, I see this label here, so that's 1. Now, I see this class selector, so that's treated like a class. And I see this is called a pseudo class. Actually, let's check if is this a pseudo. Yeah, it's a pseudo class. So this one will be treated like a class as well. So Close.
Not close at all. So the input doesn't count as a.
Oh yeah. No, that's part of the class selector. But that's a good question. That actually, yeah. Yeah, it should be 21. That's why you said 22 with this one.
I didn't say 22. Somebody else did.
Yeah. All right. So I had others here, right? So this is a single ID, so it's 100. This is a class, so it's 10. And this is a class plus an HTML element, so this is 11. This is 2 HTML element, the header and the A tag, plus a class, so this is 12. This is a class plus 1 HTML element, so this is 11. So this is the same one. 2 elements in a class, 12, and so on. Yeah, that's mostly the same thing. We don't have anything better. Okay, so if we have a conflict, there are a cascade that is going to happen. First of all, is it an inline style, part of an internal style sheet, or an external style sheet? That this order matters. Then, in the order of the style, the last one wins if they have the same specificity, right? And the tag with the more specificity will always win. So sometimes you're having like 100 different style going on, and you do everything right, but you cannot get this to apply, and you wonder why. It's because maybe your rule is not specific enough to override another rule. Right, so you would have to maybe have a look in DevTools and look at all the styles that are being applied in here. And if a rule is like overridden by another, you would see probably a strike true, and you would find out that okay, my rule is probably not specific enough. If you did everything right and you still cannot get it to work, and you need absolutely this to work, there is one thing you can do is let's bring back my H2. Okay, let's say I want this red to be, whatever happens, I want this to overtake everyone. So I'm going to use that important here. And now I reload this, and then it's now in red. Okay, so that's like, okay, if I'm not able to have my style being applied, and I did everything I could, maybe I'm using an external library of some sort, and it's not working, I can use this important thing. However, don't abuse it. Okay? So that's why most of the time it's preferable to use classes over IDs, because IDs, they have a higher specificity, but it's not always a good thing. Let's say when you're going to use Bootstrap, which is a front-end CSS framework, and let's say they use IDs throughout their framework, and you're trying to override their styles, you're going to have a hard time because they use ID, they all have 100 or more specificity. Then you would have to create a more specific style to override their styling, right? So that's why you should not abuse IDs either. IDs are really useful if you want to target certain elements in specific case, but they should not be a replacement for classes. All right, any question about any of this? Cool. All right, that's it for today. Thank you.